Thanks. Well, welcome everyone thanks for coming out to PyRVA tonight to talk about naming test cases. My name is Chris May. I'm one of the founders, the co-founder of PyRVA, and very excited to have you here and those online as well. Yeah, just a little overview of what we want to do is just kind of a probably a little bit shorter meeting, at least as far as what we're covering. We're just going to talk about what the purpose of test names are. We're kind of asked to have audience participation for that to try to find out what we can benefit from changing the way we write test names and stuff like that. I'm going to do an overview of the Osher-Rove test naming pattern. We're going to write some tests, and then at the very end, we're going to discuss what did we learn, how does this compare to what you usually do, things like that. So before we move on, I'm just going to say, just for those who don't know me, my name is Chris May. I'm a Python technical coach, which means that I get to join teams temporarily and just improve the way they write code, they communicate about code, the way they communicate with each other, and just leave a positive impact on the team. Leave. More about that later. So let's start off with some audience participation. What purposes do we have? What can we get out of different ways we name your test cases? Give me a couple of those.
Differentiate between different tests.
Yeah.
It's not just test 01 and test 02.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Spelling is not my number one thing. Okay, so it differentiates between it tells you what it does, what each test case does. Any other?
Describes the test.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What if a test goes wrong? Does it help in that? Or if it fails? I mean, in a way you could say that, right? Kind of maybe describe what could go wrong, potentially, kind of help you drill down to find something.
Is this just the name of the test or what the test, now are we into what the test is doing?
I'm thinking just the name,
Oh,
so,
it's gonna be, analyze a fail?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, in that, if it's named correctly, it could help you maybe, potentially, at least, narrow down what part of your code is broken. That's good. Any other ideas? These are pretty good.
Is there any way it could help you organize your sleep?
Yeah, I'd say so. These are great. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I think I agree. These are all things that test names help us with, right? So let's talk. A lot of one pattern of writing, coming up with names for your test cases is a pattern that Roy Osher-Rove came up with, which is the unit of work underscore state under test underscore expected behavior. Now, obviously, he didn't write Python because he title cased the variables, but I still think it's a really good pattern we can still follow in Python. So the unit of work, state under test, expected behavior, drilling into those a little bit more. We have the unit of work. So this essentially is kind of what Peter, like what kind of you're saying in some ways, kind of helps organize us by saying, usually, especially if you're like in PyTest or some of these, you use unit tests and you have test classes. this unit of work tends to be the same for a group of tests. So it's like, say if you're testing if you're testing a shopping cart or different types of products, maybe you're just saying like test a certain type of product or something like that. So you have like say maybe 10 test cases, all that start with test product can or something like that. Then state under test would be the kind of middle part. So this is things that says what kind of data are we passing into the function? What data is kind of there at the beginning of the test case? We're not giving actual values necessarily, at least the way that Roy, Mr. Oshiro, we're going to try to practice his name until it feels natural. His point was not to necessarily put actual values in there, though sometimes I found that to be very helpful in my own tests. And then finally, the third part, expected behavior. What result do we assert on this test? What kind of behavior do we expect? There is the variation on depending on how you the situation and stuff. People will kind of flip the second and third one to do expected behavior when stated in their test. So this is something that we can practice here in just a moment. In fact, let me go ahead and just kind of put a and so I'm putting this note here, especially because we are going to write test cases together. And there's this a refactoring kata called Gilded Rose, and it's funny, like in some circles it's like notoriously famous. It's a tool that people just have loved and love to hate. And yet it's also amazingly unknown in so many circles. And I find, I just find it interesting that it's so polarizing and also so unknown at the same time. So the reason is because it is kind of the requirements are kind of easy, but it's told in a kind of story format. So as I read through the description, and as I put up on the screen, kind of make notes about business rules, what kind of invariants there are, what kind of constraints there need to be, and what should happen with different types of items. And then we'll write some tests. So this is the specification for the Gilded Rose. Hi, and welcome to Team Gilded Rose. As you know, we're a small inn with a prime location in a prominent city run by a friendly innkeeper named Allison. We also buy and sell only the finest goods. Unfortunately, our goods are constantly degrading in quality as they approach their sell-by dates. We have a system in place that updates our inventory rates. It was developed by a no-nonsense type named Leroy, who has moved on to new adventures. Your task is to add a new feature to our system so we can begin selling a new category of items. We're not actually going to implement doing the new category. I kind of forgot to take that sentence out. We're just going to kind of build test cases of stuff that's already there. First, an introduction to our system. All items have a sell-in value, which denotes the number of days we have selling. All items also have a quality value, which denotes how valuable the item is. At the end of each day, our system lowers both values for every item. Pretty simple, right? Well, this is where it gets interesting. Once the sell-by date has passed, quality degrades twice as fast. The quality of an item is never negative. Aged brie, there's an example of an item that they sell, and it actually increases in quality the older it gets. The quality of an item is never more than 50. Sulfurous, another item, being a legendary item, never has to be sold, so it doesn't have to sell by date, and it never decreases. Backstage passes, like H3, increase in quality as the sound value approaches, and increases by 2 when they are 10 days or less, and by 3 when they are 5 days or less. But quality drops to 0. Feel free to make any changes to the method, which we can skip because we're not doing this. And just for clarification, an item can never have its quantity increase above 50. However, sulfurous is a legendary item, and as such, its quantity is 80 and never alters. So that's the specification. Let's capture some of these requirements. Just so we kind of keep them straight. All right, so what we got? I'll start off, we have items. Items have a sell date. What else do we got?
They have a quality value.
What's that?
They have shift in the value.
We have a shift in value in what way?
Or varies on the product.
Yeah, that's it.
So are we going to keep this point in time?
We are not.
We are not.
Oh. Actually, quantity of an item is never negative.
So are we coming up with the algorithm for quality on the rest of the items, on how it declines?
Thankfully, we don't have to come up with the algorithm, we're just coming up with the test cases.
Oh, gotcha.
The quality of an item is never more than 50 unless it's the legendary
Yeah.
item. I think that's the only one. The funny,
Yeah.
So is our tests are to check inventory at a point, at the current time and make sure all these tests pass? Is that why you should frame this?
And let's look at an example. So this is an example test case that was applied with the code. So we can create items with different names. There are specific names, but in this case, they just use food. And then we could pull up. So each item has the name, sell in amount, and quality. So let's get back in. So in this case, it's 0 quality, 0 days left. You pass it into the Gilded Rose class, update quality, and then we can make assertions about what results.
So we're taking it, we're taking it and advancing it one day from wherever it is,
Exactly.
and then checking
Yeah.
at a item by item level, not a portfolio.
That we can do it by portfolio if you like, but I imagine for this, the main point of this, of course, is to really just practice coming up with test names. So I think that we keep it simple. Yeah. Which I imagine we've got a pretty good amount of things we can start with. So, does anybody feel excited about maybe trying to come up with a test case? I'll be happy to. You're welcome to come up here and type and write the code for it. How about, I'll start. Quantity is never negative, so I wish I could have this, both of these done right. Unit of work, state, inner tests, and expected behavior. So I feel as though this is I was trying to debate whether or not to show some other things. So like, I feel like this is actually part of the struggle I have with test-driven development. Is like, how do we plan this, right? So as we show, yeah,
Can you define unit of work?
unit of work, yes. So in this case, the unit of work is kind of the thing you're focusing on. So in this case, like one unit of work would be like a generic item. So like we could say test, like say item, then for items quantity. I think that's, and then we could also focus in on one particular type of item, like the backstage passes. We could have a test, backstage passes could be the unit of work. That makes sense? Does that seem?
So this one, your unit of work is items,
Mhm.
so it's kind of by items. Then what was the next one? The
Yeah.
quantity is your state under test,
Yeah.
and then expected behavior.
Under.
Sure, yeah. That sounds great. And I guess really it should be just kind of default. That's nice. And then it still runs, right? Yep, it's a figure.
What'd you call it? A thunder?
Dunder.
Thunder.
The Dunder method is in Python.
Double.
You have the double underscore on the side.
Yeah, I like that, because I was trying to figure out a way to make it a little more clear as to what the three, thank you, Brian, that's great. So in this case, oops. Just to get a passing test. So that's what we could do. Let me. There's one thing that's, sorry.
This is VS Code, right?
It is not, it is Python.
This is Python.
As you can see, so part of the reason why this is such a loved and hated kata is because the code has a lot of nested if statements that make it really great for refactoring, but also very hard to understand. So, like, I don't know, what's something that maybe we can do age-free, perhaps?
Yeah.
So let me grab. Just to make sure. Correct spelling and all. Okay, so what do we want to test about the age break?
It increases the value of age.
Perfect. So quality increases. So I think this is interesting because, like, I feel like this could be one where we could swap it, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. How would
Because
it be?
you
So
put,
what?
if you put almost any other item where Brie is,
Yeah,
and you just switch it to decreases with age.
that's true. Yeah. To answer your question, swap the second and third part. Because the way he explained it, he said age-free increases with age. Increases quality with age. So I guess maybe it's like,
Quality is the next.
yeah.
That's quality increasing wage for H3.
You're right, because This is kind of, that's actually an interesting thing. It's state under test, expected behavior. So state, the part under test is the quality. The behavior is that it increases with age. Yeah, that sounds about right. Does that sound right?
And it's really item is H3 is the unit of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I could do like that. And then kind of paired with that, we could do like a dev test item quality decreases.
It's actually not, doesn't the tickets quality increase?
Yeah.
Up to a point in time?
Dockets.
Oh, that's not, that's, now the naming gets tricky, huh?
Yeah.
Is it increases when we write it down? Did we?
That one is like very, there's, I think, 10 days out, it does something. And
Yeah.
Increases, but okay, so increases by one when there are more than 10 days. This is one of the things I always
Is that
struggle.
what it does? That wasn't even stated, though.
Yeah.
You made that up.
Yeah, well, we could test it, right? That's one of the nice things about having a code that's already written. So let's see. So, well, let me write the whole thing and then we can see if we can shorten it. So test spec stage tickets quality increases by one with more than 10. If you do 10. That's obviously a very long, and not spelled right.
Straight T and then.
Yep. All right.
I'm just thinking this is great if, like, I was new to somewhere
Yeah.
and these tests were written. It's nice to know exactly, like, yeah, from day one what they're doing.
Yeah. That's a good point. Especially like I know a lot of I've seen things even with this refactoring code where people are like grouped them by age breed, group them by backstage tickets and stuff like that. So it's kind of clear to see. But yeah, it's funny. Like I hadn't practiced this style of test naming before tonight, and so I was like, oh, let's see how it goes, and I'm liking it too. Yeah. The only thing like I feel like I'm very verbose with test case names, and sometimes that's good, but like tests like this, it's like, is there a way we can, for me, that's one thing I always think of, it's like, is there a way to shorten it? But we could always try it. But let's also test this out and see if, test if our understanding is correct. So backstage. Gotta love these names. Okay. Sell in and quality. Okay, so let's do 12 days. And the quality is 10. And then let's assert that the quality. So if we're thinking it goes up by 1, it'd be 11. Run our test.
Oh.
Actually, I guess I should say equals to.
And we're not gonna pass, like, you're gonna fix hard code 10 and 11 there.
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking you write an abstract test case that, I don't know, you pass it, are we allowed to, are we gonna pass variables into these test cases, or are we? How do you structure them? I haven't done enough test case writing, so you're a couple steps beyond the test experience.
No problem. But no, that's a great question. And actually, let me pause. Does anybody else have any thoughts or anything to contribute? Or yeah.
There's 3 or 4 cases for the package. There's more than it's out, 10 to 3, 3 to 0, and because this is a known paper ban, it's okay to write your test for that specific quantity. And you might end up with 4 different test cases with different names, you're not expected behavior to change for your test. So, can be it doesn't have something that actually affect the database. It's just an item with a certain kind of behavior that you want to have consistent from test suite to test suite that it runs.
Right, but if I'm 100 days out, that hasn't tested, that it moved, changed my mind.
I mean, one,
It can, but that hasn't tested.
That's not tested back.
I mean, so I guess another aspect is, do you have an abstracted thing that's a test backstage ticket quality that has the 4 cases, greater than 10, between 10, do you write it that way? This is what, that's the architectural test cases I'm uncertain about.
Yeah, yeah.
Is you could, and you could write 4 separate ones and still call another master header.
so. Test case from 1, 2, 3.
That's fair?
So you pick students.
Yep.
Where something changes, the behavior changes. So. You're not about, right? What if it's 1, a 0, and a -1, or a super large number, and those all work in your school that you can or work at. So you can limit your cases just to this kind of balance.
That's normally what someone,
Yeah, and so I think you bring up a really great question because there are a number of things, right? I feel like I really appreciate what you brought, especially the what I've learned in the last say 6 months that I feel has been the best for test cases is to make it as understandable as possible, so that when you read it, you can understand what's going on. But you also have to. And so in that case, you could argue, like, we could do, 4 test functions that, essentially copy this one, like we can do real quick, and then say, increases by 2. Less than 10 days, and then we can, So now we have 2 test cases, which let me make sure they run, good test, yeah, pretty cool. And then, like we have multiple test cases, which I feel like it all depends on the team and the situation. But what you can also do with things like PyTest is you can actually kind of keep the parts of this test that are the same and pull out the parts that change. So in this case, we could say, import PyTest. What this does is it allows us to pass in the values, kind of like we were saying earlier. So you can say, in this case, we want to pass in the days left and the expected, days left.
Current quality, expected quality.
Yeah.
Function. So I'm going to make this a little bit wider so we can actually looks a little bit more like the function. And then, so essentially what this is saying is these are the things we're going to provide the function with the same, and we have to provide the same name variable parameters to the function. And so then we could do, so 12 days left, 10 quality, we expect 11.
Thank you. I've seen this in the PyTest documentation, and I had no idea what it is doing.
Yeah. So we're running tests, they pass. And then we can now go 8, 10, and 12.
You want to do
And just to show that it doesn't, we can, one thing I love about it, so this should not work. One thing that's great about PyTest is like, you can have the error test back they think it's whatever, but it did not work for this specific value, 8, 10, 11. But if we want a more descriptive name, we can actually and then give these
much better syntax.
so now when we run it, we at least know, get a little bit more,
Wow.
use kind of similar naming things to give us a better idea of what's going wrong. And an easier way to kind of quickly jump and say, like, oh, this is what's off. What's that?
Should be great.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Upgrade. Look deep in thought, but
Yeah, no, always, but, you know, okay, so are we gonna adjust that to be, are we gonna keep that just increased by one by more than 10 days
Right.
and specifically have a fail case?
oh, no, we would definitely
Or
want this to
when you
be.
go into abstract backstage ticket quality, is this then gonna be across all days and we're gonna have some if statements or what?
Right, okay, so that was the other thing I was gonna get to. So this kind of goes to what Brian was saying, is that you can really kind of denote, very, the points in which things change, they kind of, there's a term there.
Your transition boundaries.
There you go, yeah. Then additionally, there's another tool that you can use called Hypothesis that is, I knew what it's called. No. Essentially what it does is you can define, let's say, like patterns of behavior. I had it earlier. Anyway, the point is like you can say like for any number above 10, I expect this to increase by 1. And it'll just throw a bunch of numbers at it for you, so you don't have to.
This high test architecture will enable that to happen.
PyTest itself doesn't, but there is another tool that plugs in
Another tool.
Hypothesis. Yeah.
Is PyTest as a tool, this is open source too?
Mhm.
Interesting.
Yeah. And
So
that's,
hypothesis plugs into PyTest, I think that's another thing.
yeah. And I think it also plugs into the unit test. I'm not 100% sure, but I would assume so.
Is PyTest a superset of unit test?
Is not. Well, it is. I guess you could say it is because it supports all of the unit tests. Like, yeah, it does not support nodes anymore. No, not yet. Yeah, there has been talk about bringing PyTest. So the main difference between unit test and PyTest is that you have to pip install PyTest in order to have it, whereas unit test is part of the standard library. But I've heard they're bringing PyTest into the standard in the next version. So that'll be even easier to use in the future. But to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, we now have, and this is one of the problems with, code, especially documenting, is sometimes your names can drift, right? Because we now need a more general name. So test backstage passes quality increase.
Now, what do we call this?
Yeah.
Changes as specified?
Kind of.
That is a problem, but, so then you're back to just keep the 4-7.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the things where you kind of work through, like in test cases, in projects I've been a part of, I have split them apart and then come back together as I've kind of figured out different ways of seeing it. And, my teammates have definitely like, it's like we kind of come back and revisit it and say like, I think it's more understandable if we do it this way. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And we give it a try, and then after a couple months, we might realize, maybe it's the other. You
I
know?
hate that. Why don't you do it? Let's try this right now for the next 3 months.
Exactly.
I understand that feeling.
But they can also have a slightly differentiated set of name and docs record.
It's true. It's very true. Yeah,
How does that work? Can you show me that?
sure. Brian, you have an idea?
Check out one name, that's where it's. Right.
On here?
How do you add the doc strings, I guess,
Oh.
is my basic question, since I'm fairly new.
Yeah.
Very.
So basically, you use the triple quote, you.
Okay.
It's that function, and then gives you a done doc. Property function that will read that.
That can be extracted, basically. Documentation.
And that's your modules, everything. Can use it. So if you were to write, so that this module all about this testing quality changes, you could make a note about that at the very. File, if you have a certain level on the generate documentation, we will pull those values for you. All you do is use a triple quote. So, there's a convention where you have a statement of quickly describe what the function or what it does. Then you have a blank line and then that.
Oh, it's math. That's math. Yep.
I do wonder if PyTest ever hooks into the documentation like that. I'm aware of it. Yeah, it'll just print out the whole code. But like, yeah, there are definitely, you know, as Brian was saying, there's definitely,
You try to call a function and something else. I mean.
that's pretty cool.
So the PyCharm and VS Code, no. To look at it, and it has to be, you know, very active.
Yeah. And there are even ways you can enhance this, like there are different styles you can do it. In fact, let me try. Yeah, so- I think it might. I'm gonna try one more. Yeah, there we go. So it'll actually document each parameter, what type they are, and what the function returns. If you wanted to like really go in, like this is the way we would document, you know, the types of arguments and parameters and stuff like that before we get typing. But yeah, that can sometimes be a lot to see, but you know, it's one of those things, right? It's everything's a trade-off. So it's like sometimes it can be just as nice to have like that whole string. Sometimes it's nice to have a lot more to kind of really dig in and see what understand the function, grok the function. That's true. Yeah. Let's see. Here we go. So we've got a few tests. Do we have any more questions about this pattern or anything?
Was there any other tests that had some different insights?
That's a good question. So let's see here. So we got one. I'm going to try making this a little smaller, and then we've got item funding never drops below 0, and quality decreases with age. Age breed quality increases with age. Backstage tickets changes by specified. and increases by 2 with less than 10 days.
This question there is the second one, the decreases with age is not a universal. Oh, we're not worried, we're just testing a specific item,
Or in this
Okay.
case, it's a general one, because,
but it can't be age 3.
right. Yeah, and
It's just
so,
we're picking a specific case, right? I'm not testing the full, whatever you call it, the full range of the function.
yeah. So, yeah, this is funny, right? Because like,
There's that one special good, or whatever,
Yeah, that legendary.
the legendary.
let's see that. All right, legendary quality, right?
Yeah. The very weeks.
Do we want to test it or do we want to write a couple more test themes? What do you think?
That's the legendary quantity. Always 80.
No, the quality is always 8.
What? Good quality or?
Quantity is.
Quality.
Yeah. Quantity, I don't think.
Quantity better. With 3 weeks.
Yeah, so this is interesting. So these, I feel like these two tests is kind of the same thing. Yeah. But which one's more descriptive? I guess the second one.
Yeah.
Well, we go ahead. Should we try this? Legendary
Sassafras,
sulfurous, sulfurous hand of Ragnaros. I really wonder how they came up with names of these things.
They were playing some Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
That's a great name. That's fun.
So the quantity is 80 that we decided, and then so let's do one.
That's a name, right?
Yeah, right. That's a good point. Upgrade by 2 is oh right because I changed it. Sorry. All right, cool. Now I think that's it. That was the time I've set aside for this. We could keep going, but I do want to talk about first one, review the test names that we created. Which ones do we like the best? So let me do.
On line 23, that's probably the coolest one. But my favorite is probably 30, I think.
Yeah.
The next one is just easier to understand for me. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I really appreciate that because I fear that when I write long test names, that is going to be harder or harder for people to understand things. So I really appreciate you saying
So, when you write the report, then you have the intro, this is what I'm going to tell you, and the bias, I'm telling you, conclusion, this is what I told you. So, having that long statement, this is what I'm going to tell you, and people are telling you that you want to have, that they can.
Someone mentioned it earlier, that it's about the next guy coming in,
Yeah.
or it's about me in 6 months.
Yeah, in fact, I think I really appreciate, Brian, that you mentioned that, putting in the keyword. Yeah, because like, I don't know how many times just during this session, I'm like, which is which again? And like that would just save some effort. Totally. Check back purposes of unit tests we wrote, beginning of the session. Do our test names fulfill these purposes? I'd say we did. I mean, we definitely come pretty close to these, right? Should have tried. Yeah, so I feel like, to me, I feel like the weakest one of these test themes for me is this one on line 23, just because, I liked your contribution. I just was flustered about trying to figure out what to put in there, but at the same time, it kind of works too,
Change it, whether or not you're using parameter or not.
Yeah, yeah.
With Ramsey, when it made more sense to have you less specific,
Yeah, it's very true. It's,
naming the parameters.
that's a really good point, because it's like, this also shows that backstage tickets is a very complicated item. And so as such has a little more complicated stuff around it. One other thing you could do too, I kind of mentioned test, I like this, I like how what I was going to say is we could have one file with just tests that just cover kind of generic items. And then another file that just tests age, breed, and then backstage passes and so forth. As a kind of organizational way to say keep them separate, especially if you end up with a number of tests, it might be very nice to kind of keep them all separate so that. This one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Included in the pack.
Yep.
The change it from buy to ask specify. Then in the brand name, upgrade by 1 with more than 10 days out.
Yeah.
Then upgrade by 2 within 10 days. So that gives you all your parts back and kind of more generic functional meaning.
Yeah.
Very descriptive test cases that come out when if it fails, you're gonna change that if it failed once. You can look at the name.
Yeah.
So that tells you everything you need there, it's just like with your engineering company.
And can you, on that params area, can you name params there?
That's a good
Does that
question.
make sense?
Let's see.
That's a good question.
Because that stays left, the first one.
Yeah. Does not seem so. Seems like it's just
Oh, what's the mark? So that may be something else.
Yeah, so Marks is so you can, that's actually one thing that's really cool, right? So we could do, let me think. Well, in this case, we can mark it as, how did it say, was it? Yeah, so. So what I just did is I marked this specific case that it is expected to fail. And so you would, in particular, I always wondered why this would be the case until I heard, there's a blog article that I read about, essentially the idea is if you're working as a team and you discover a bug, you can document it by making a test case and mark it as expected to fail. Because essentially what you're trying to do is to say, this is the way it should work, but right now it's not working. That makes sense. So you write the test as if it was working, but if you were to run the test case, it would fail because it's not working. So you'd mark it with X fail so that it doesn't fail.
So that it does the nightly build?
Yeah, exactly. And it's a way to communicate to everyone, say this is something we need to address.
That's not something you keep in long term.
Exactly.
It did, he did. That's, I think that's it right there. It's a no upgrade, isn't that a,
Yeah, so we,
That's the fairness, that's what you.
said they ignored it. Interesting. So wait, let me read this. Definitely would seem like that would be. Institution that skipped it.
Is Mark supposed to be like tags? In this case?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Because yeah.
You want to do another, that's just the extra Alan?
Oh, sure. So. Let's say, for instance, that.
Then you just make it simple, that's case. Yeah. Serve false.
Or, oh, we do that, but I was thinking like a good example is, let's say the business is thinking about changing things that actually Legendary does change and say after 0, it drops, after it reaches its, well, it doesn't degrade in days either. I don't know.
I'm just trying to show you the functionality.
Sure. Sounds good.
Then you just make that 81.
Yeah, that's true. So let's just assume that I was writing a test case that documented something the way it should work, but it currently isn't working, instead of just asserting false. But if I run it, it will assert false. So with this, you could do a test mark that xfail, and then you can give the reason. It's
I think it's practice X fail.
Yeah.
oh, really?
You can't run the difference between practice Mark. So practice X fail. No.
Check documentation. Yeah, you're right. There's a
Reason use.
that's probably exactly it. Yeah. More condition reason. Yeah. So I should have said reason. Yeah. So interesting. So I guess it does show up as a skip.
Yeah, it says
Over
So-
recorded.
did it actually run the case or not?
Yeah, I realize now is that it isn't like this icon is a skip icon, but it actually did X fail. It did expect to fail. And I think what Python does is it pulls it up and say like, hey, you've got an X fail in here. And what's interesting, the other thing that's recommended is if you do work it this way, add a strict equals true parameter in here, because if all of a sudden it does work,
It's high test X fail gives it, is where you need the reason.
Yeah, it got changed back to Mark. I
I
thought he had changed it to PyTest.xfam.
yeah,
Mark did it. Slip back in.
I put it back in there because I don't think, maybe next. I always use pytest.mark, so I don't test.
Do you have to change to false? Is that the assert false? I don't know.
I honestly don't know. I'm not sure. I've never used pytest.
Well, it's nice that it shows it skipped. 'Cause you'd hate to see just cats and like forget about it.
Yeah, and that is one of the things that has saved me so much is that like I have a code base where I'm essentially building a rules UI. So people want to say like if somebody's last name is Smith and their first names, the first 3 letters of the first name is ROG or something. Like you can build all these like complicated rules, and I essentially had like things that I kind of documented as this is the way it should be. I marked it as X failed. And so like every time I write my test, there are a bunch of little tiny, that look like skip tests, but they're reminding me that they're still there. And then every now and then one would pass, I'm like, no kidding. And it would throw an error. And so I, double check, look at everything, and be like, yes, fixed it, move on. And then it just, just be able to delete that line of code, and be good to go. It's part of documentation. Yeah, if all your tests follow this naming convention, would it help you to read and understand your tests? What do you think? I don't think this is necessarily the end all be all of all naming methods, but I definitely, myself, I've been surprised by it.
Framework, start.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for saying that. That reminds me of one other thing. Because a lot of us are newer to testing, one thing that I really can get hung up on, especially early on when I'm testing, is like how to what am I actually writing? And one pattern that I found to be incredibly useful is called the given when then. And so it's like, so in this case, like given, backstage tickets, da da da. And then when we date, then the quantity of expected. So this is an exercise I do a lot where when I'm not really sure what exactly I'm testing or what I should name the function or something like that, I'll do exactly what I just did. Right, given when then, and I'll usually the then is the easy part because I'll say like this is what I want to test, and then I'll start backtracking and filling in the other pieces. And also if the test case that is kind of complicated and has a lot of like moving parts, I would definitely do this just so I can like document, maybe break it up so it's like, okay, this is all the like gathering data together. This is what we're doing to it, and then this is what we expect. It kind of helps readability. Cool. With that, that's all I have prepared. Again, my name is Chris May. You can reach me. My website is everydaysuperpowers.dev. You can see me on Twitter at _ChrisMay. I am not as active on Twitter, but I do check it every now and then, but I'm more active on Mastodon. And if you thought this was useful and if you think that your team might benefit from things like this, let me know because I love helping people enjoy their work more and doing the coaching thing. And with that, that's the talk for tonight. Thanks for coming out. We don't have to leave right now. We can chat, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.